Good evening. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina at the old jail. Francis Gaines Stowers was brought here in November 1865 after his arrest for the robbery and murder of a group of federal soldiers. Stowers was incarcerated here during his trial and later transferred to two other prisons. My research question asks how the Civil War and its aftermath affected Stowers economically. The significance of the research question. So little attention has been given to men like Stowers, a white Southern non plantation slave owner who lost almost everything during the war and had to start over. A common man's story, if you will, not an elite, but a member of the middle class. The key primary sources that I used during my research were U.S. federal census schedules, county court records, military and government records, historical newspapers, and especially online databases. Uh, with my methodology, I began using secondary sources, and there were a few that did mention him and what had happened to him. However, I came across a scholarly article that I thought would be helpful since its subject was white Southerners after the war, only to find out that this article argued that they had recovered their wealth within two generations. And at that point, I made it my mission to try and prove them wrong. And I used Stowers as my test case. Uh, the summation of my research findings, indeed, Stowers lost almost all his wealth, the value of his real estate, and that of his personal estate, which was basically his workforce. Uh, However, he was still in possession of his home place and had to start over with just a son and some former slaves. 6 months later, after the end of the war, he was arrested, and then he spent the next 13 months in jail. Uh, as if that wasn't bad enough, he contracted tuberculosis in prison and died in 1871, 5 years after his release. And within 10 years after that, his wife and four of his seven adult children died, perhaps from the same disease. He had already lost his oldest son during the war. The significance of my findings showed how the war affected him, and indeed, it affected him more than most. Knowing what I did about economics of the period and knowing what I did about other people in his situation, I feel like that I did show, my research did show how he was affected. Uh, I'd like to thank two of my classmates for their suggestions. I'd like to thank Christy for reminding me that this was an economic project and I needed to focus on that side of the research. And I'd also like to thank Jason. He suggested that I look at the big picture and try to relate Stowers to others in the state and in the South as well. And I also want to thank Dr. Moore, as usual, for all his help and input. Hello, fellow historians. While my paper did not focus on the time that Stowers spent in the old jail, since I was going to be in Charleston this past week, I thought it would be interesting to film there. The site is owned by the National Park Service and is now a mixed use facility. Only a part of the ground floor is open to the public and is accessible by purchasing a ticket from a local tour company. The tour lasted 45 minutes and I was given permission to film when the tour ended. It was not possible to film inside the building. It was dark and tours were conducted every hour, so I filmed outside in the courtyard. Usually I have a prepared script but decided to use notes this time. There was no time for a retake. Once I had a chance to review my video, I noticed that it was too short, that I had made a mistake or two, and that I had forgotten to mention some key details. First, it may be a small thing, but Stowers was transferred from this jail to not two other prisons, like I said in the video, but to three others before he was released. Second, the name of the scholarly article that I referred to is The Intergenerational Effects of a Large Wealth Shock, White Southerners After the Civil War. It was published in November 2021 in American Economic Review. Next, I neglected to mention that my research methodology focused on comparing Stowers' wealth, his real and personal estate, and his economic activities in the antebellum, bellum, and postbellum periods to show how the war had affected his ability to provide for his family. Concerning the significance of my findings, I should have emphasized that the majority of middle class people in the South that were slaveholders lost most of their wealth because of the Civil War, just like Stowers had done. I'm going to end with a clip of the outside of the old jail. This structure was built in 1855 on the site of the original jail that had been there since Revolutionary times. I hope as you look at it that you will remember how important it is to preserve the history of our great country. Thank you.